The two most prominent Chinese corporate lawyers end up at the SEC. Both their law firms are very involved in the Ethereum project. And this guy will not apply the securities laws to Ethereum. And then a year and a half later, they turned around and the SEC sued Ripple, claiming that XRP was a security. There was like a massive coordinated effort to delay that information coming out. Crypto is born with the Bitcoin white paper, which is published on Halloween of 2009 by a unknown person or group of people known as Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay. But nobody really knows who it is.
No one, well, somebody knows who it is,
okay.
But you got a lot of people projecting a narrative into the market that no one knows who it is.
Oh, okay, that's what I don't.
So it's just that's the mainstream, thing. We don't know who Satoshi is. So he publishes this white paper. Now it's coming out of the financial crisis of 2008, right? 2008, 2009, which I think you're very familiar with the mortgage crisis and the things that occurred. Madoff ends up becoming discovered, who was in line to be chairman of the SEC at the time, right?
Yeah.
So we have Dodd-Frank come out, but effectively, the highest levels of finance pretty much knew that the fiat game was coming to a conclusion as a result of that, right? Okay. So they turned the money printer on. They tried to come up with some regs. They bailed out the banks, the too big to fail banks, all that stuff, The Big Short and all these movies. And what Satoshi, the essence of what they get at is that by having the banks, the central banks, if you will, control the money supply. So it's basically having a centralized place where they get to decide, the winners and losers, the balls and strikes, all that kind of stuff. Having a centralized umpire is a bad thing. And we need to figure out a way to basically have our monetary system be decentralized and basically owned by the people. And if you read the white paper, he came up, there was a big problem, a couple of big problems with trying to do it digitally. One of them was called the double spin problem, which is that, it's the issue you referenced before about being able to fraud, right? And just copy and pay. If it's digital, think about it being a digital picture. You can just copy it and paste it, right? Well, that was a concern. So how do you make sure that this unit of value that's in digital code is the actual unit of value?
It can't be counterfeited.
Exactly. So the protocol that he came up with, which was expressed in the white paper, is called proof of work. And it was basically that you had a bunch of computers solving computer problems. And once they all agreed that that was the answer, it basically printed a block. So that's a point in history. It was a block. And then it would do it again and basically says all the transactions that occurred in that are the correct transactions. By doing this system, he solved that double spend problem. That we actually know that the blocks that are being recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain, so just sequentially one after another, are the actual transactions that are occurring on the network.
So that it can't be counterfeited.
Correct.
Each one of these cannot be counterfeited. So
correct.
That makes it secure.
Yeah. The problem with the Bitcoin is that it takes an enormous amount of computing power to basically solve all these problems. And we've now moved into an industrial level of that process of solving the problems. They call that mining. Have you heard and they have these little
I know the guys that have like 10 or 12 and 20 of them lined up.
Those are called miners, right? Through little small single purpose computers that all they're doing is cranking away on hashing out the problem or whatever that they're trying to solve. And once they do it, blocks printed, yields them some rewards. Now they all participate in pools, so it's kind of like the more power you're putting into doing it collectively, the more yield you get out of the pool. And now we have public companies that their sole focus is just doing these mining operations. The largest Bitcoin mining operation is a company called BitDeer. It's a spinoff of the largest Bitcoin miner manufacturer, So the manufacturer of the actual computers, which was a company called Bitmain out of China, they spun off their mining operations, and it's located in Texas, where I live. And it's something to behold, right? I mean, it's those little computers are 6-inch squares, maybe a foot long type of thing. Imagine that stacked on top of each other, 30 feet in the air, and then going down 100 yards in a tunnel, and then about 20 of those, what they call trains, these different tunnels. And it's operated by a team of maybe 12 people. A Bitcoin miner, they sit in a trailer, and they've got computer screens that are monitoring how the computers are operating. If one goes out, gets an alert, guy jumps in a golf cart, drives down, pulls that one out, unplugs it, puts a new one in, plugs it back in, and it's right back to doing it. Takes that one back to the shop, reverbs it, right?
Okay.
So,
any idea how much revenue or Bitcoin that facility is producing?
Yes. That one, based on, so they did a SPAC merger deal to go public in the United States. Are you guys familiar with what that even means?
No.
SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company. It's a company that goes public before it has any assets. So it raises the money on the promise that group of people is going to go out and basically do a deal, do a merger or something with another company. The company that went public was called Blue Safari Acquisition Corp., and they did a merger with this company BitDeer that I'm telling you about. They were doing, in the first half of 21, they had done something like $230 million in revenue. This one company far and away dwarfed all the other Bitcoin mining companies.
Okay.
So if we actually use Bitcoin for day-to-day transactions, buying coffee, buying groceries, all that type of stuff, this proof of work protocol requires too much energy. It would melt the world down, right? It would take all of the electricity that is produced. Like, it would require more electricity than's even being produced. And this is occurring at the same time that AI is starting to manifest and become, so data center capacity and stuff for artificial intelligence is competing with the Bitcoin type stuff. So, so then basically there was another version of how to do it that was developed by this company. Really, it precedes the company. It was developed by a group of people that formed what is now Ripple Labs.
Okay.
In the XRP ledger. So the Bitcoin, the what was expressed in Satoshi's white paper, that protocol is called proof of work. It's like, remember taking algebra?
Right.
Like, proof up your work. It's that concept that all these computers have to basically solve the problem, prove that they actually worked it out, and then they get Bitcoin for that. So that's how that whole protocol, proof of work, works. The XRP ledger, the XRPL, uses a different protocol that doesn't require mining. Okay. All of the XRP, there was 100 billion XRP that was created as part of its Genesis block. Basically, it's an initial start of the network, was created then. So there is no need to mine it. It already exists. You only need to basically do the transaction proofing part of it. And they do that by something called a consensus mechanism. And same thing, it's a decentralized network of computers that are basically looking at the transactions on the ledger, and then going through a series of coming to a consensus, which I think is greater than 80%, that it is that group of transactions that's the actual transactions. And so that prints a block, and same type of thing as the Bitcoin.
Okay.
Okay. So it's super energy efficient. It's super fast. A XRP transaction. So I don't know if you've ever pushed a Bitcoin transaction before, but it takes sometimes now 3 to 5 hours to settle. When I was first getting into this stuff, you would buy some Bitcoin or send it to somebody, and sometimes you wouldn't know till the next day if they'd got their money or not. So that was one of the things that got me looking. It was like, there's got to be another solution, right? XRP transactions settle in 3 to 5 seconds. It's like faster than you can talk. Like if I were to send you some money right now,
Right.
You'd be like, holy shit, I can't believe that happened like that fast. So it's super fast, super energy efficient because there's no mining involved. And it is super scalable, right? Already, the ledger can do like 1,500 transactions per second, but it can be scaled into the millions of transactions per second for global transactions. So where we're evolving now is that we're starting to put assets on chain, and we're using networks like the XRPL to do what's called the tokenization of assets, which is effectively putting the ownership, the indicia of ownership on chain. That's what tokenization means. So if you think about this home, right? A real estate type thing, you'd want to basically take the title level documentation of what it means to actually have, so the deed, any mortgage encumbrance, lien, all that stuff, all that data you'd want to put into effectively an NFT and put that in and print that NFT to the ledger. And that process of doing that is called tokenization.
Okay.
So we're going to tokenize everything. We're going to tokenize every security, every stock, every bond. That's where it's going to start because those are super easy to do. We're going to tokenize every mortgage, all this stuff. So 20 years from now, everything that kind of happens in paper world will happen via the blockchain. We're in a process right now where they're tokenizing all the fiat money, and that's what it's called, stable coins. Have you been hearing kind of that? Like there's USDC, which is done by a company called Circle, USDT, which is Tether's stablecoin. That's the most prominent. It's the number. It battles with XRP between number 3 and number 4 cryptocurrency by market cap. But that is, allegedly Tether acquires U.S. treasuries, and that they are pegged, they're each unit of Tether, each coin is pegged 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar. Ripple is about to launch. They just got approval yesterday to launch their own stable coin, which is going to be called the RLUSD for Ripple USD, but they call it the real USD. And every other currency, the British pound, the Swiss franc, Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble, the rupee, everything is going to be all fiat money will be put into a tokenized form so it can run on blockchain.
Okay. So, and you're saying that this is you're saying this is happening now. I'm saying, is this like, is there legislation that says no, this has to be done by
there is
2030 or?
Yeah. So, what you're saying is there a hammer that's like, that's coming down? So, yes, there's, the Fed had already committed to move to, basically its FedNow program and have what they're calling the Big Bang, switchover to digital by March 2025.
Well, I understand. So
this has been
cash.
Cash will ultimately be phased out. You won't need it.
How long? And you're okay. And you're saying that's law. That's Congress has passed.
Well, we're going to have to get into the Fed's relationship with our government, which is, the Fed is not actually our government.
Yeah.
So they don't have to follow the law, right? They're a private corporation that's a third party that
so you're saying
the federal government.
The Fed is determined this is what's going to happen.
The Fed is moving. All the central banks are moving into this. The Fed is just a central bank. It's the head of the central banking system globally.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay, so
there is legislation. There's
Right.
a few handful of bills that are in Congress right now to basically make this stable. There's one of them is a stable coin act that may occur by the end of this year or very early next year once Trump is sworn in.
and then
So
over the next 10 years, they
that'll
phase
make
out money.
they will phase out
Cash.
paper cash, and you'll use your phone just like you're using tap to pay credit cards now, and Apple Pay on your cell phone. You'll spend digital money.
Will it still be USD or will it be titled
It'll
like
be USD.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be whatever currency you want to use, and that kind of gets into globally what's happening. Are you familiar with like the BRICS nations?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, right? The BRICS has exploded.
All our buddies.
Yeah, all of our well, maybe after this conversation, you'll think of buddies and enemies in a different way. I don't know.
Okay.
So they've gone off in a certain direction because they've had to, because the U.S. federal government has sanctioned them out of the monetary system. So the United States and the Fed controls what's called the SWIFT system, okay, which
Right.
was it's built on like 1970s messaging technology, hasn't been updated. You send basically a SWIFT message, and then they have to settle in paper through something called these nostro-vostro accounts and correspondent banking system. So all these banks in different countries, they basically get the message. They say, okay, Matthew wants to pay Jimmy in India, okay, and Jimmy wants to receive the rupee in India, and Matthew wants to send $1, right? So they send the message that that's occurred. Then the bank in India basically has to say, okay, I'm going to take some dollars and set them over here not from Matthew. Matthew dealt with JP Morgan or somebody over here in the United States, right? But I'm going to take JP Morgan's account of dollars and take some money out there, and then take out of my rupee account and put it into Jimmy's account. So that kind of accounting function and moving the money around between the banks is called correspondent banking. Massive fees, super slow. I mean, it can take days, weeks sometimes to basically to settle money that way.
Okay.
Fiat money. And so in this new digital world, right? And then there's all the costs of that, right? Every one of those middlemen banks,
Gets a fee.
is getting a fee. And so when you start thinking about the people who come in the United States and they're working and they're sending money back home to Mexico or Central America or India, wherever, China, those are called remittances, right? And that's where your MoneyGrams and Western Unions and all these companies. Think about the people who get their check and then they're going to the Get Cash Now, and then they're sending. They're getting charged 10% to send money back home,
Right.
to mom or grandmom, whoever they're sending it to. This new digital world will allow those cross-border remittances to occur. Oh, and then there's a time issue. It will allow those to occur in 3 to 5 seconds at virtually no cost, like fractions of a penny, and it'll be direct. And the way that occurs is, instead of doing the nostro vostro, where we have to keep all this liquidity locked up at these different banks in the different currencies, you don't need to do that anymore. You'll have a digital dollar, a digital rupee, and then you need a bridge asset, and that's what an XRP is. So JP Morgan, you'll say, okay, send Jimmy, and he wants to get these rupees. He wants $10,000, equivalent in rupees, right? So you'll tell JP Morgan that. They'll take the dollars by XRP, send it digitally to the bank in India. They'll take the XRP and convert it into digital rupee. I've got it. And the whole thing will occur in seconds, and it costs less than a penny to do that transaction. And when I say less than a penny, we're talking .0000005 or something like that of a penny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is just an automated system that requires
automated system, digital system. So we've had to, there's been a whole, thing that's had to occur over many, many years of plumbing that digital system and creating these digital rails to move, to have the networks be able to talk in all these different countries. And you kind of need to bring everybody onto the system at the same time, because if you're not on the system, you will instantly just be kind of not competitive in that market. You'll never, if you're a small country, in Africa or something like that, and you don't kind of come onto this system, you'll be forever outside the system and having to rely on, trying to get your fiat money, get somebody to take it in a system that's already gone digital.
But you're saying that everybody has already signed up and agreed to be on the system.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes. And we're in the final innings of making the switch over, which for the Fed, they're going to, I think it's like March the 10th, 2025, they're going to move over to digital. It's been discussed that there's going to be like a year, 18 months. It could take 5 years till they, take cash out of the system. Now, your concern about the control over that, and like governments or some party being able to take money out of your accounts. I mean, that's really kind of what's fueling the geopolitical unrest that we're going through right now in the world as we move to this new system. That is, humanity, is looking to have a digital bill of rights. We're looking for decentralized system where there is no Fed or central bank that's completely in charge of doing that for these exact reasons, right? And so that's what this movement towards decentralization is so important, because otherwise, if we just allow them to switch over and it's the same, bank monopolists that kind of run everything, then they'll absolutely be able to make us do whatever, right? So we kind of have to reject that system. That's what these populist movements are all about politically, because it's already kind of happening through the large corporations, everything, them forcing, whether it be diversity, equity, inclusion type stuff, or, BLM or whatever, whatever the political theme du jour is, climate change, all this kind of stuff. Right.
Or if you don't get vaccinated, then we'll shut your account down.
If you don't get vaccinated. Right. Exactly.
Or we've got a shortage on gas, so for every household can now only spend $150 a month on gas, or because there's a shortage, or whatever the reason is. Yeah.
So we absolutely, and I believe, Trump's rise to power and the people he's putting in place are very much, freedom loving American people, right? Back to constitutional type principles. And I believe you're going to see more of that manifest, when he's in office. I think you're going to see a major dismantling of the centralized governmental systems across the world. It's what's happening here is happening everywhere. The unrest in humanity and all that. I mean, people are tired of being debt slaves to the system.
Right.
And people are rising up, and it's getting kind of, getting a little crazy out there.
So what happened with the regulation of the SEC that
Yeah. So
that so far none of this, so far all these different crypto coins, which assuming plays into this, has been unregulated.
So there is no regulations. The SEC in particular has tried to take the existing securities laws and wrap them around this new technology.
Okay.
And it really doesn't work in some cases. It could work in other cases. The subject of the movie, Rigged from the Start,
Right.
which was done by Fruition Films. You can go to fruitionproductions.com and see the movie. Basically, there was this movement has been going on in the government and in the regulatory agencies for a while. They knew this was coming. And what should have occurred was they should have started adopting regulations and kind of having rules of the world for the digital asset companies to follow and comply with.
All right.
Instead, what they did was they colluded with kind of the legacy banking system and people outside of the United States to front run the system and try to maintain the monopoly for the centralized banking parties and the political institutions that rely on this centralized banking system. Some might call that the deep state.
Right.
So they basically picked one that they could control. That one became Ethereum. And they basically bought up the Ethereum supply. Ethereum was initially a proof of work chain as well, like Bitcoin.
All right.
They went through something called the merge. I think that was in 22 or 23, where they turned it into a proof of stake protocol. So remember, we talked about, we had proof of work is Bitcoin, consensus is XRP. Now you've got this other thing, which is proof of stake. So proof of stake doesn't require the computers to like do all that hashing and mining stuff, right? It basically says, okay, the people who have the most Ethereum get to basically vote on the transactions that they think are real, and that they are incentivized to basically elect or select the right transactions. And they do that by basically pushing their stake in and saying, that's the one. So effectively, all these institutions got together. They bought up all the Ethereum, and now that it's effectively a centralized system, right? The SEC then, back in 2018, had one of their very senior people, a guy named Bill Hinman, who was the head of the Division of Corporation Finance. He went out and gave a speech that said Ethereum was decentralized and that they didn't see anybody, like there was no promoter behind Ethereum.
Okay.
And since it was decentralized, they wouldn't have to apply the securities laws to Ethereum.
Okay.
Okay. What that means, you're like, break it down for me.
Right.
So if the security laws apply to one of these layer one chains, that means they can't just, for you and me to send value back and forth like we talked about doing in those remittance transactions. We can't do that. We have to do a registration statement, give that to the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're talking about lawyers and time and money and all this stuff. Because we're engaging in an offer or sale of securities. Okay, so we have to comply with the entire securities law regime,
right?
Or find some exemption that works, like a private placement type exemption, which can only be to accredited investors. Like you and me may not be able to even engage in that transaction, right? So it basically completely decapitates the use case of what I'll call these layer one blue chip cryptocurrencies, which is basically for peer-to-peer to send value to each other.
Okay.
So,
but if it's not regulated,
well, we're not talking about necessarily being regulated by the securities law.
Okay.
So with Ethereum, they basically said not regulated by the securities law, and they got clever. And they came up with, they basically said, since there's a consumption at that time of Ethereum, just like there is to do an XRP transaction, there's like a fraction of an XRP that's burned to move the money. That's basically the compensation into the network. Okay. It's not a yield. It doesn't like go to the validators of the network. It's just the network is consuming itself, and it's basically turning XRP into a deflationary asset as opposed to like fiat currency being a inflationary asset or inflationary currency. Because the Ethereum was being consumed as fees, they called them gas fees.
Okay.
They basically said Ethereum is like oil in the network, or it's like natural gas in the network. It's being consumed to push the value on the network, and therefore it's a commodity.
Okay.
And the commodities rules, which apply to, natural resources and gold and rice and soybean and all that stuff, don't require all this registration and filing statements with the SEC and holding periods and all the things that apply to securities. So you can just trade, in a more so by doing that, basically all of the Web3 development talent, all of the software engineers and people who had the capability to start building what they call digital applications, dApps, on top of a blockchain, basically went to Ethereum, okay, and started building
off of that
because it had this, we call it the free pass. That speech that he gave, this guy Bill Hinman, called that the regulatory free pass. That in and of itself would have been probably fine that they did that. That's in 2018, the summer of 2018. A year and a half go by, and they decide. So at this point, Bitcoin is far and away, because it's like the Kleenex, it's the Coca-Cola. It's the first one. It's the one everybody knows, right? So it's still to this day
the standard.
Let's don't say it's the standard.
Okay.
I would say it's not the standard. It's the Kleenex. It's the Coca-Cola. It's the way a normal, regular person, when you start talking about digital assets, as we call them, or crypto, they're naturally going to think Bitcoin because it was the first. And right now, today, it's got the most value on the network. There's almost $2 trillion, I think, right? XRP and Ethereum continue to battle for kind of the number two. My prediction, our firm's thesis and prediction, and a lot of people in our community believe XRP will ultimately overtake both of those because it's more efficient, faster, more environmentally friendly. It's just a better thing. At the time he makes the speech, Ethereum basically overtakes XRP as being the number two crypto by market cap. All the developers flow there. And then a year and a half later, they turned around and the SEC sued Ripple, claiming that XRP was a security.
The guy that said it wasn't, what was he? He was the head of the...
He was the head of the Division of Corporation Finance.
Okay.
So the
SEC.
Right. Guy named Bill Hinman. When they decide to sue Ripple, and this gets into, this is what the movie's about. This is the regulatory capture. This is the corruption. Brad Garlinghouse, who's the CEO of Ripple, who's the primary steward of XRP, announced on December 21st, so it's like right before Christmas, that they've just been informed that they're going to be sued by the SEC. The SEC sues them the next day on December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. $15 billion left the market cap of XRP in an instant. It went from where it was trading 30, 40 cents, went like to 15 cents, like in a heartbeat. Hundreds of thousands of people devastated financially, right? The vote, so there's 5 commissioners at the SEC. There's a chairman and 4 other commissioners. That's how the SEC kind of, its upper ranks, that's how it works. And there's kind of divisions of enforcement, trading, corporation finance, all this different stuff. The vote to bring the lawsuit against Ripple was a 3-2 vote of those 5 commissioners.
Okay.
So there were 3 that voted for it and 2 that voted against it. Okay. And it was pretty much, except for this one exception I'm about to tell you about, it was pretty much down party lines, as in the more left-leaning people voted to sue, and the more right-leaning people on the commission voted we shouldn't sue. The tie-breaking vote was the chairman of the SEC, a guy named Jay Clayton. And he basically breaks the tie, says we're going to bring the lawsuit. They bring the lawsuit, and then he leaves the SEC the next day. And as well as like most of the top people who were arguing to bring the enforcement action, including this guy, Bill Hinman, who had nothing to do with enforcement, allegedly, but he had come back and was like very adamant that this lawsuit needed to be filed. They all leave the SEC.
Was there a reason why, or?
Well, the mainstream reason why that Clayton was leaving was because Biden had been elected and he had been appointed by Trump, right?
So he assumed he's going to be fired.
Well, at the SEC, it's been normal protocol for the past several chairmen, going back a while, that they just resign and allow the new president, the new administration, to appoint it. So from a surface level, that's all that was happening. He was just rolling off. Biden was going to be sworn in, a week later or whatever,
right,
a couple weeks later, and appoint his own SEC chairman, which in fact occurred. So Bill Hinman leaves the SEC. They all leave at the same time. He goes back to his law firm, Simpson Thacher, which is one of these white shoe securities, capital markets law firms. Jay Clayton, same thing, goes back to his law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, for so I think they're still technically partners there. They're still kind of in their law firms. Shortly after, within a few months, Jay Clayton ends up on the board of a company called One River, a hedge fund called One River. And as you started to look into One River, in October of 2020, before they dropped the lawsuit on Ripple, they made $1 billion investment in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Okay.
Bill Hinman, he's left. He's gone to Simpson Thacher. He ends up becoming the head of regulatory affairs for Andreessen Horowitz, which is really their crypto fund. They were the largest crypto hedge fund in the world at this point in time, right? They had just raised, I think it was a $2 billion fund to invest solely in crypto. So he goes and becomes the head of regulatory affairs there, okay? And all of us are just kind of watching this at the time. So this is very early 2021 and kind of scratching our heads like it didn't really mean that much to us at the time. It's like, okay, this is the revolving door of government and Wall Street. It's been happening for eons, right? So we start doing some digging, and it turns out that Jay Clayton and Bill Hinman have been kind of together for a while. They actually go back. They were the lead attorneys on the IPO of Alibaba in 2014.
All right.
Okay. Alibaba was the largest IPO in history.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It was a Chinese company that they basically listed in the US at a $230 billion total valuation.
It's kind of like Amazon, right? Isn't it
it's the Chinese version of Amazon. Okay. We're going to dig into it a little more because this is kind of where you start to kind of see how they're all connected. But yes, they're like the Chinese version of Amazon. They sell a bunch of different products. They're also the largest distributor of Bitcoin miners in the world. So Bitmain, who I referred to, that was manufacturing those miners that spun off BitDeer, that has the Texas operations now, they're distributing most of their computers through Alibaba. Right after they go public, the month after they go public, They do a joint venture with a company called Ant Financial, okay, and basically start to have their own financial arm. Alibaba does. There was a guy who was Bill Hemmon's partner at the law firm named Li Ming Chen. Okay. They were both featured after the Alibaba IPO as like deal makers of the year. He becomes the general counsel of Ant Financial. So we're like, okay, so all these guys are basically they're all working together on these mega corporate deals and everything. I wonder if Hinman, when he gave that speech back in 2018, like, was there any involvement, like with the law firm or something and it turns out there had been this foundation called the Ethereum Alliance, which was formed by JP Morgan, handful of law firms, Microsoft was involved and all this stuff. And they formed right back in this 2017, timeframe leading up to the speech. Simpson Thacher, Bill Hemmon's law firm, is a major contributor to the Ethereum Alliance. Okay. Their sole purpose is to promote Ethereum. All right. So let me just kind of recap what you've had the two most prominent Chinese corporate lawyers, if you will, end up at the SEC. Both their law firms, and I'll talk about Jay Clayton's firm here in a second. Both their law firms are very involved in the Ethereum project, so much so that they're part of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. And this guy, Bill Hinman, goes and gives a freaking speech saying they will not apply the securities laws to Ethereum, effectively giving them a free pass. And then didn't stop there. A year and a half later, they sued the primary competitor of Ethereum. Okay.
All
right. So that was like smoke all over the place. So we start, it wasn't us, but people in the community. Notably, there was a watchdog in DC called Empower Oversight. They start seeing all this timeline being put together by people in the XRP community. Like, holy shit, there's like corruption here, right? Something's going on. So they start doing FOIA requests on the Securities and Exchange Commissions. FOIA is Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah. Super familiar with it.
Yeah. Okay. They're asking for Hinman's calendars, the emails. Like, we want to see like what was the deliberative process before he gave this speech, giving Ethereum a free pass.
Right.
Right. We want to see if there's any connection. Was he talking to Simpson Thacher people? All this kind of stuff. Right. And the SEC,
national security.
Yeah. The SEC basically starts freaking hiding the ball. So initially they send one request asking for this stuff, and the SEC says, yeah, we'll respond, but we're breaking it up into 12 different requests. And the result being it takes years and years. At the same time, in the Ripple lawsuit, Ripple's counsel is asking for the same stuff because they're like, we're the same.
We're being sued.
We're being sued. You gave these guys a free pass. We're basically the same type of stuff. We're digital networks, and like, what is different from what they did? And you walked on stage and told the world that you're not going to apply the securities law to them, but you sue us for an unregistered securities offering. Right. And the SEC is like not wanting to give the information. It took 7, I think, court orders in the Ripple lawsuit to finally start getting some of this stuff. They finally they did a deposition with Hinman. And then when they start disclosing these emails and different things, they're like 90% redacted, just pages blacked out. They're like not giving, or they're just deleted. Empower Oversight ended up getting a series of the emails that were kind of, that Hinman had circulated the speech internally, kind of in early would have been late May, early June. I think he gave the speech June 14th of 2018. So there was a whole, lawyers looking at it, writing it, and all that kind of stuff.
Why you can't go back to the judge and say they redacted this. We need to be able to see what's like, unless.
Well, this is a different matter. So this is coming out because of the FOIA request that the oversight group. It's not coming out necessarily in the lawsuit.
Okay. You can still go.
They were just refusing. No, they were just refusing the court orders. They weren't complying.
But they're court orders. A judge ordered that. I can go back to the judge and say they gave it to us.
They did.
It was a big black box.
They did 7 times.
And what did the judge say? Like or
judge would order them to do it again.
And then they do it again. They just black out.
No. In the lawsuit, they didn't even comply with the order for like 7 different orders. That's what I'm telling you. There was like a massive coordinated effort to delay that information coming out. So what starts, in 21, I don't think we end up getting that stuff until like the spring, early summer of 23. And we almost had, the summary judgment order in the case came out in July of 23.
Yeah, that's possible. Like I don't see how you don't go to how a judge doesn't say you're going to do this, or people we're going to start issuing arrest warrants. Like you can't.
Oh, the judge was telling them that saying all kinds of stuff in the orders, like you were showing you're not having a faithful allegiance to the law. You're basically, the judge was very,
you just can't ignore a judge.
They did.
A federal judge.
No, they can. And you know why they can? Because they're a federal agency. And there's whole separation of powers. And they were absolutely ignoring a federal judge.
I thought you were going to say that they came forward and they said, well, national security, because that's the catch-all.
Yeah.
It's even when you're like, how is this? They can't, or we can't explain it.
Yeah. So anyway, still to this day, there's a ton of that information that's been disclosed that's still substantially redacted. We don't know everything. And so the Ripple case is pretty much over. This thing that we call ETHgate, the free pass, and then the suing Ripple, all that is known as ETHgate now, is really just bubbling up. And that's really the subject matter of the movie Rigged from the Start.
And so it probably the price of Ethereum skyrocketed and then Ripple
price
crashed.
of Ethereum after the speech went up 11% like in 2 minutes.
And then after the drop, then Ripple
Ethereum
crashed. Yeah. And then Ripple
crashed, right?
Okay.
And Ripple has been suppressed, or XRP has been suppressed. Well,
and
all the major exchanges, Coinbase, Kraken, on and on and on, delisted XRP.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So it wasn't even available for trading for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was until one exchange kept Uphold, which is based out of the UK, actually maintained trading in XRP.
Yeah, they said they interviewed the president or CEO of that
company, Simon. Yeah.
Saying like it was.
And when did they delist? Yeah. When did they delist Ripple?
It was in January of 21.
Okay, yeah.
So the lawsuit was filed late December, like right before Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I want to say it was like January 19th that Coinbase took XRP off the exchange.
What happened in the last month that made it go up 300%? Because right now it's at like $2 and something. And
yeah,
it was,
I can speculate.
Yeah, speculation.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
So, there's a few things that have happened, call it over the past year. Mm-hmm. So in July of 23, I think it was July 13th, the judge in the Ripple case came out with her order on summary judgment and basically determined that after all this time and all this money, Ripple spent, I think, $150 million in legal fees battling this lawsuit against the SEC, that XRP in and of itself is not a security.
Okay. So the SEC devastated a company.
Devastated a market.
Okay.
Devastated a company, but not really, because Ripple continued to be very successful overseas. They just really couldn't operate full tilt in the United States during this time.
Now? Are they back on board?
So when that ruling came out, I want to say, it shot up shot up a lot and then traded back down since the summer 23. And so now you've actually got to, so in the order, there was 3 buckets of transactions that the SEC had put forth saying were securities transactions. One bucket was the sale by Ripple to institutions pursuant to a contract, okay, where they sold XRP to institutions. The second bucket was called programmatic sales. These were sales that they would just kind of put out based on an algorithm into the market, and different people were buying and selling it. They didn't know who was buying and selling it. Programmatic sales. The third was they compensated certain contractors and employees in XRP. The judge ruled that the programmatic sales and the payments to employees and contractors were not securities transactions. She ruled the institutional sales were securities transactions because there was a contract, and that the institutions were sophisticated and the type of people who would have expected Ripple to go out and do things to increase the value of the XRP that they were acquiring in that contract. So that's why it wasn't like over in July of 2023. Then we had to go through a whole penalties phase. The SEC initially came out and asked for $2 billion in penalties from Ripple. Ripple argued for less than 10 million.
Right.
The judge, I think, ended up ordering it's somewhere like 120 million that Ripple had to pay based on that one thing. Also, it's noteworthy that the initial lawsuit not only sued Ripple, but they sued the chairman, a guy named Chris Larson, and the CEO, a guy named Brad Garlinghouse. No fraud allegations, by the way. They were basically just trying to put pressure on them to capitulate early by suing them, personally.
Yeah.
After the court order in July of 2023, within a couple of months, the SEC agreed to dismiss the lawsuits against the individuals. So the case is kind of over, except the SEC has appealed the ruling. And because the SEC appealed, Ripple appealed. So we're still, even after all this time, and it's almost been 4 years, right? Well, it's been, yeah. In December, it will have been 4 years. It is December.
It is December.
Yeah. So if we get to the 22nd, it'll be 4 full years this shit show's been going on. But effectively, what is happening is we're coming to a conclusion of the case. You're having institutions clearly see where the digital markets are going, and that XRP is going to play a major role in this new system that we kind of started the show talking about. So they're starting to try to acquire as much of that XRP as possible, because it's going to be, we believe it's going to be the primary layer 1 blockchain for all digital assets. Ripple announced that they're launching their stable coin, the RLUSD, which is going to be able to be interoperable cross-chain, so we can go on the Ethereum chain, go on Tron. Cardano has been, which is kind of one of the players that's up there, has been talking about having the RLUSD be available on Cardano. You're going to see other currencies, fiat currencies, be put on the XRPL tokenized, and this will be the RL British pound and the RL euro and all that kind of stuff will be put on the XRPL as well. So all that's really starting to happen. You also, Larry Fink, BlackRock, came out in January or February of this year, basically saying on mainstream financial media that, so Bloomberg and CNBC and all these places, that they're going to be tokenizing every financial asset. And from an asset manager, this is like nirvana, right? Because they make their money on trading these assets.
Right.
They're already using AI to do it. But this would, if once we're fully digital in securities world, they'll be able to trade 24 hours, 7 days a week. There'll be no holiday, no bank holidays or anything like that. So just the number of trading hours alone when we're in a tokenized market is going to 5x the number of available hours to trade. Okay. So think about that's an exponential increase in trading hours. And then because it moves so fast in this 3 to 5 second settlement thing, we're going to have instantaneous settlement of transactions. So each hour is going to be exponentially more efficient internally. So what is causing the increase in price of XRP is people realize that they're going to have XRP to be able to participate in at a big kid level, at an enterprise level, and they're starting to buy it up. And that's working against, the suppression that's basically been in the market from the delisting and the SEC lawsuit. Very calculated what they did. It was pretty much just they knew they ultimately wouldn't succeed on like keeping it completely out of the market. They just needed to delay it about 4 years and let some of the legacy institutions kind of get situated and caught up, because this technology just kind of flew right by them, and you had a lot of retail people kind of buying the stuff up, which was kind of the first time in history there's been a completely new asset class that you, me, and the common man could go out and get a hold of. So that's what's happening. We think that's we're just in the very early innings of seeing the appreciation and the value of XRP and the value that's going to come onto the ledger. The projects that Vallee, that's my firm, that we've been involved in for basically this whole time that the lawsuit's been going on, is to tokenize various assets, real estate, commodities, and bring them to the XRPL. And that's been tough. The development talent was pretty much all with Ethereum projects, but it's getting better. And there's Ripple just announced a deal with I can't remember the company's name, but they have like 1 million developers or something like that are now starting to develop projects solely for the XRPL. So that's gonna so that could be driving some of the value into the network. But this is a real utility network. And what I mean by that is that speculation can't really drive the value of it that much. This will segue us into meme coins and the Haktua girl. I know you want to talk about that, right? But the whole meme coin thing has just been one big speculative
that's what I
like thing, right? It's baseball cards, it's Pokemon, it's that type of a thing. Beanie Babies.
Yeah, they don't seem to have any.
Yeah.
Well, I don't.
There is no.
I was going to say Beanie Babies. At least you have something that has some value.
And we had a wave. You remember the NFT wave of 21?
Yeah, that was huge.
And Bored Apes and all that. Most of those were printed on Ethereum, right? Published to Ethereum, like almost several times crashed the entire Ethereum network.
CryptoZoo.
CryptoZoo, OpenSea, remember OpenSea?
Yeah. So if I'm trading, let's just say a digital asset or an NFT with Ripple, I'm not going to have those large transaction fees.
Correct.
And I'm not going to have the extremely long
to
wait
move
times.
It's going to be less. To move it, it's going to be less than a penny to do.
Okay. Yeah, because that was
that was a big
and there's a meme coin community that's now developed on the XRPL. It's called First Ledger, and they're coming out with all these, NFT meme type things that, kind of relate. This has been such a fascinating journey for me because, I was like a stiff button down corporate lawyer 5 years ago.
Right.
Right. And like, I got into this community and I'm coming in from a business standpoint. Like this is about money and building businesses and all this stuff. And I end up finding there's all these riddles and riddlers and esoteric stuff going on and all. I mean, it was like, it's crazy. So the XRP community, people are writing songs and
Wild West, right?
It was, what impressed people writing songs. There's an artist out of Vegas. I'm friends with this guy. His name's XRP Bags. Go check him out on YouTube. He does these rap songs. Everything is about he's been doing this for years, like 5 years, on XRP, and these incredible rap songs on XRP. But there were more. There was this guy XRP Chiz. He seemed to have disappeared, but he had some cool XRP songs and stuff. But and we're talking 21, 22, as I was seeing this stuff, I was like, there's something about this technology which is hitting people so deeply that they're creating things about it, and that was significant to me. This was not purely transactional. There was something deeper about what was going on in this movement that really appealed to people.
It definitely. I have had many people contact me and want me to do like paintings, about like Dogecoin and can you do was it Shiba? It was like a
Shiba Inu.
Yeah.
I had a couple of engagements with artists.
Can you just text that to me?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll send you all of them. Yeah.
One of and we've done some kick-ass stuff. One of the things that Vallee did was we underwrote the first NFT that was offered as a security. So we were like, why is everyone trying to not have the securities laws apply? Just do one and create some economic rights. Like that's what these NFTs are really valuable for, is having smart contracts, economic rights embedded in the token.
So,
anyway, we were talking about artists and,
I can ask one more question real quick. Is that, so the problem with the crypto to me is that is the volatility. Like I would hate the idea of, you go to the grocery store, you go to buy something, and then it's not, you go to buy something for whatever $10 or 10 whatever Ethereum, I forget whatever the unit is, units of Ethereum or whatever,
ETH.
an 830. I go to buy something and I think it's whatever, and then it's completely changed. And then the next day I could have bought it. I could have saved 50%, because I mean these things don't subtly change. They seem like they really, and then sometimes they really drop. And that to me,
and then they go the other way too, right? Yeah, it's uber volatile, and it's because so little amount of money in any individual network can really hit the market cap pretty hard. Certainly when you start talking about millions and billions of dollars being invested into something at one time, it can really have big impact on the market cap, because the supply and demand dynamics that's just the way it is. Now, you basically have just described that's the stable coin use case, though, right? Is that you would peg it 1-to-1 with something that's so either gold
pretty stable.
or
pretty stable,
or dollars, right? I mean the stable coin, or fiat. It looks like where the stablecoin industry is going to develop as it matures is to peg it to a fiat currency. So
hasn't there been stable coins that have like crashed, or like they're supposed to be at $1, stay even at $1, and then something happens?
Yeah. There is, I want to say that some of the coins that FTX had were lost. They call that losing the peg.
Yeah.
But the
FTX was a whole different.
It is, and we can talk about that, because that ties into this ETHgate story too, right? The OG stable coins now have pretty much, they've Tether has kept its peg for a long time. It's lost it a couple of times. It'll go to 99.99 or 0.98, but then they do something and get it to be stable again. Now the problem with Tether is they keep refusing to be audited. So they claim that they have U.S. Treasuries and the support to maintain the peg, but a couple of issues. They won't do the audit, and the other thing is that their bank is the same bank that FTX was using in the Bahamas, Deltec Bank, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And you're saying that over the next 5 years, like most of the transactions will be done with the digital currency, with like the different, I guess, states.
Yeah, so that gets into some other issues. So there's a broad movement. I'd be shocked if you guys aren't generally aware of people wanting to return back to the constitutional republic. And this is like your patriot movement, your Q movement. Some people call them the truther community.
We've done a couple videos on this was prior to the election, was kind of looking into a civil war, which of course just having to watch all the videos about a new civil war,
right?
Immediately, started bringing up the whole, Texas, breaking off, California break, all these, Alaska, so I ended up getting a little educated into the possibility, what was it? Forget what, so every state, if it was its own country, like where it would rank in the world, as far as being the largest economy.
In fact, that is what we are, right? We are our own country. Each state is its own country. But after the civil war that occurred,
yes,
we basically incorporated. So the federal government became a corporation, and the states ended up becoming subsidiary corporations of the federal government. So now state of Florida, state of Texas, those are corporate manifestations to be able to be contract and do deals, right? There are movements, and it's deep stuff. It's fascinating stuff. A lot of this, if people read the book The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Who's read that over, like, I'll bet you he's read it 40 times, is Chris Marrero.
I was going to say.
So he's a guy who's a sovereign citizen.
Yep, sovereign. Yeah, this is your sovereign citizen type movement. So sovereign citizen, they'll fuss at you for that because citizen, if you go back to the epidemiology of what the word citizen means, it's like employee. So when we say U.S. citizen, you're actually saying employee of this corporation.
Right.
And so the sovereign movement would say is that all the statutes and ordinance and regulations and stuff only apply to the citizens, so the people who are employees of the corporation. They don't apply actually to you, like the living person walking around, breathing, bleeding.
Right.
They don't apply to us. We're sovereign to the forms of government. Like if you go back to the founding documents of the United States of America, and what I'm talking about, Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution, those are kind of the three key governing documents. Those were implemented by the people and restricting government from what they could do to the people.
Right.
Right. I mean, we had just fought a revolution.
Yeah.
To basically do that. Fought a revolution not to pay taxes.
Right.
And here we are, taxed out of our brains, right?
What is it? The Boston Tea Party over having to pay like a 2% tax, and now we're paying like 35% or whatever and that's just if you're thinking.
We don't even want to think about it.
No,
I mean, like if you every sales tax.
If you start adding it up, it's like 50-60% of everything that you get. I've already been taxed on this money. Well, now I'm going to buy this, and that they're going to tax me on that, and then I'm going to buy this, and they're going to tax me on that. And tax, it just goes. It just never stops. It's never ending.
So
in a house that I'm being taxed on,
right? In the house you're being taxed on,
or
that you thought you owned,
exactly.
That you thought you owned,
but try not paying your taxes.
Try not paying your taxes.
You can stay here.
That's right. That's right. But that is, I mean, this is cool stuff. But there's a big movement that sovereign movement, which is manifesting as Q and truthers and all that. It is a large movement now. You want to say probably had a big part of getting Trump reelected, and there is a belief that Trump is going to bring back the republic of the federal republic, if you will, and that all the states will then
have more power.
Basically go back to being countries. So that's what's leading. I think we talked about this at the first, but like Texas, I'm pretty sure Florida, they already have passed legislation to have gold-backed money. Okay, and that's permitted under the Constitution. I think it's Section 10, Article. You have to check me on this, Colby.
I was just say every sovereign citizen I've ever met has been in prison or is headed there. Like I'd love talking to them, because boy, they are knowledgeable. They manage to tweak it in just such a way that you're like, I'm not positive that's what it means, and that may be what it means. But
so
that's not,
back to the sovereign citizen, I kind of went off on this rabbit hole of what is it. So that's an oxymoron, right?
Right.
If you're sovereign, you're not a citizen.
Right. Well, did you find the?
Yeah. So it says, let's see. I literally just typed in gold backed money Constitution. It says Article or Section 10 C1.2.
Yep.
Coining money by states.
Yep. That's it. Yeah. So the Constitution permits states to have their own money, but it has to be denominated in gold or silver.
I had no idea. I've never heard that.
So the states they're basically. I mean,
so what do you think?
What is the Civil War anyway? Right. I mean, how would it occur in 2024 or in 2020?
We got a whole.
Yeah.
And so here's what's funny about this. This is what's really interesting, and this is also probably plays into, I'm sure, your whole thing, is that we did Rudyard.
Yeah, Rudyard.
It's a difficult name.
He actually lives in Texas, doesn't he?
Does he?
I think so.
Super smart. The guys, he's clearly on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Very smart guy, right? Brilliant, really. And I had watched a video he'd done 10 years ago when he was in high school and started his channel about what would a civil war look like in the United States. Now, of course, 10 years later with Trump and everything else, what would it look like? So he had redid the whole. I think he just republished it, changed a few things, republished it. Anyway, it was big again. Comes on here. We had a very, very tame, respectful conversation. Didn't go crazy. We're not saying anything that's overtly political. We're staying kind of neutral in everything. And he told us exactly what was going to happen. He said, look, he said, here's what's going to happen. He said, you were going to get 100,000 or so views. He said YouTube's going to demonetize the video. And we were like, why would that happen? Like we didn't say, we're not cussing. We're not talking about drugs. We're not talking about, we're not rape. We're not talking about sex. We're not talking about anything that should be demonetized, that they could even allude to it. We're not even being extremely political. And everything we were talking about was, he's like, well, this book is what, is where I got this information.
Or in the 1800s when this happened, this happened.
Yeah. Historic events. So he's like, this argument is rooted in these different things that happened in history. And so that's possible that it would happen again. And I was more of a nuts and bolts guy, where I was saying, like, he's thinking more philosophically. And I'm saying, listen, every state has a National Guard. We've got something like 19,000. Texas has 26. So I think Texas has like 22,000 in theirs. You got California, you've got of course the military, overall military. So I'm saying, how would they, if each state had its own, the National Guard went with that state? Like I'm breaking it apart. And he's like, yeah, I didn't even thought about that. You're thinking about like what would a real battle be like? Of course, the movie Civil War had just come out. I don't know if you saw that. Super interesting.
Yeah, I want to see that.
It was A24 is the production company.
Okay.
So you could tell, I think they had a budget of like $40 million. I can tell you right now, they spent $30 million of it in the last 15 minutes. Like, that's the best part. The first part is they're just driving around and more of a drama.
But so it's a civil war that occurs in
now,
today. Okay, gotcha.
Now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had this whole thing, and he was right. Like, what did we get to when it suddenly got demonetized?
He said his videos will get to like 200,000 and then get demonetized. It kind of flatten out, and that's almost identical to what our video did.
Because he said that's what happens with all of his videos.
Now, I hope talking about this isn't gonna.
It shouldn't, because we've mentioned it before.
Okay,
and we're pretty far in the. And we're pretty far gone.
I want you to send me his. You still have it?
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Send that to me.
It's so good. And you know what's even better about his? It's better because it's upsetting to me, because I'm not somebody who wants to hear what I want to hear.
Yeah.
It's like I only want to get information that helps support my delusion or my belief of what would happen. He has a whole video on, had the South won the Civil War. This is the original Civil War. What would have happened to the South? How would it have progressed? And it's not good, bro. Like, it's like I'm sitting there, and he explains why. He's like, you don't understand. We didn't industrialize. We weren't industrialized. We were relying on slaves. The North had, and during the Civil War, the North industrialized even more during that period of time. So they were. So
is that a way to say that humanity or society benefits from technological progress?
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely.
So if we are technologically progressing in our monetary system, won't that be good for humanity when it all plays out?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
As long as it's done in a way that doesn't oppress, right?
Right.
It doesn't do this type of stuff like the fears of going digital that you expressed earlier. I think it could be a really good thing. Imagine if we
could be a good thing. You know what I'm saying?
Technology is neutral, right? It's how are we going to use it? Are we going to use it for good things? We're going to use it for bad things. AI is the same. We're dealing with the same issues.
What would you say? Because I feel like most people on their stance on kind of crypto currencies, it's either they're passionate or they're. It's pretty polarizing. Like they're passionate one way or the other. Like what would you say? Like the people that are like, I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. Like all the things, all the scandals, the things that have gone on over the last few years with it. Will they have a choice? Like, will there not be a choice in 5 to 10 years where like they're going to have to be using some type of crypto or
there's no alternative?
I think,
or will it even be like?
I don't think they're going to notice.
Yeah.
I think the people who
it's very hard to
are so just like, I am never going to get into that. They won't notice. It'll be such a subtle. It's a boiling the frog type of scenario that they'll be using their Visa card. Visa will end up running on digital, and they'll never know, right? And so unfortunately, I think there's going to, if they're entrepreneurs, if they don't adopt into this technology, they're going to get beat out by entrepreneurs that do adopt the technology. And that's just even from a P&L standpoint of being able to receive your money, pay your vendors or whatever quicker, more efficiently. That's just going to happen.
And is it to the point now where that is more efficient? Like with Ripple, it's more efficient than just using.
It is.
Yeah.
It's substantially more efficient. Had we not, we were already, we started or invested in a media brand in 21 called Astrolite. And we had a crypto influencer named James Rule, who's out of Texas. He's an XRP guy. And we were paying him in XRP. And we were basically funding, as many. The issue at that time, which is becoming less of an issue now, and will continue to become less and less, is that not every vendor would take a cryptocurrency or a digital asset. Yeah. So, but now, I think I read Chase Bank's now taking XRP for mortgage payments and credit card payments and all that stuff. There's Travala, which is one of the big travel apps. They're taking, XRP for all kinds of different, travel things. So it'll just end up being another thing on the various abilities to pay. You'll be able to pull some out of your digital wallet and pay, or you can put it on your credit card or whatever. So I think we're kind of we're at that point in time. We've been traveling on 2 trains. You got the people who are never going to do it, right? Fuck that.
It's fine.
That
Yeah.
I'm never going to do it. And you got the people who are like, I'm leaning in. I'm going to like learn this stuff. And we've been kind of able to look at each other in the other train. And we've started this process now. And the people on the train that I'm jumping on, we're kind of going to the future.
Right.
And the people who aren't are, you're gonna live over enough period of time, which is, I don't know, 20, 30 years. We will live dramatically different lives. The people who stuck with wanting cash and to live in the physical world are going to live a more 3D, manual life. And the people who go digital and they incorporate AI and digital currencies and digital securities are going to be completely liquid, able to be anywhere in the world, doing anything they want to do. And maybe even outside of this world, right? So if Elon continues to...
I was just thinking, I was like, if Jess was here right now, my wife, she would be pacing back and forth, go upstairs, walk around, come back down. She'd be so irritated right now at the idea of, a cashless society and, and just, so she's such a distrust of the government.
I'm with her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with her.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when you were talking earlier, I was going to bring up Boziak, and I thought, I don't know how can I enter Boziak's whole thing, which is funny because you would think as much of it. I have a buddy named John Boziak. He's in Thailand right now. He moved to Thailand.
Oh, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks? No, not even 2 weeks. A week and a half?
Yeah, week and a half.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's funny because every time you would think he's so like anti-establishment, but yet he loves technology. So when you talk about things like, the Tesla bot, right, or robots in general,
yep.
And I'm like, yeah, they're going to release them, and it's going to take 10 years to work out the bugs, and then eventually they will be amazing. It will be iRobot, And for him, he's like, yeah, they'll do all the jobs, they'll do all this, and then we'll have a universal income, and we won't have to work. And I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, that's not possible. Like, you don't understand how the economy works. You can't just keep having babies and have robots do everything.
Right.
And you get paid this much money. You have to contribute. And he's, fuck that. That's bull. And I'm like, it's because you want to believe they're going to give you $100,000 a year to just run with it, and the robots will do it. But, it doesn't, it's not going to work like that. So, but I was wondering, as we were talking, I was thinking to myself, like, what happens when this is great, but what happens when you can buy a robot for $25,000 to do everything, or even now with Tesla? I think it's this year. You buy a Tesla, you can put it on an app, and while you're at work, it's driving around. It's doing Uber basically. It's a Tesla version of Uber, picking up people, dropping them off, charging them, and so it's making its own payment. Like, what happens when I can finance a robot for $25,000? And it can get a job doing $40,000 or $50,000. Like, some people are going to be like, that's amazing. Oh my God, I bought 6 of them and I did this and I'm making this much money. Yeah, but what about the people that have bad credit, can't finance them, can't get them? They get even more poor. It's like suddenly that, which is already happening. Obviously, the middle class is shrinking. But that would be such a major shrinkage. What do you think about that? Because I'm sure you have a lot more understanding than I do. Have you at least probably had more time to think about it?
Well, I think to do what we're doing here today, 20 years ago, you would have had to be CBS. Here's you're your own network, right? With your
insane.
Own media distribution, your own branding, all this stuff. I think you probably, if you were to compare, I don't know how old you are, but 25-year-old Matthew
55,
to
it's over.
Okay, if you're 50, you're 55,
down.
so I'm 50, so we're like the same age. I'm 54.
It's over.
It's not over. It's just beginning.
I'm positive. I feel both.
Don't even get me started on the med beds and all the stuff that we got coming.
The brass on the Titanic right now.
It feels that way sometimes.
Listen,
for
I
sure.
can't tell you how many pills I'm taking. I counted out my whole weeks of pills today. I was like, this is getting insane. Sorry, sorry. My wife will come up to me and she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" and give me a kiss and hug me a little bit too long, and I'm like, "Do I need to go take a pill? Like, what's is this?" And she's like, "No, you're good. You're good." She's in my stomach. I'm like, "Okay. Let me know. I need 25 minutes. Dissolve." No, go ahead.
But I mean, I get a kick out of technology and technological development, and it's worked. Hadn't always been great. Like the first thing, I was part of that group of lawyers that we came out of law school. My first day at the law firm, they handed me a BlackBerry, and I was thinking, "Oh, this is really cool. I don't have to be at my desk to get an email and do."
Right.
Well, I didn't realize that they basically just captured my entire
Yeah.
That meant I was available.
Yeah. They just added 10 more hours onto your work week.
They did. And that was the BlackBerry. I mean, don't even talk about these supercomputers that we're walking around with now, right? They can stream video. And what was that one thing we did? And you're able to pull that up. Just the amount of content and stuff available. It's been amazing, though, right?
You think it's amazing?
I do.
Imagine me walking out of prison 5 years ago. I'd never seen an iPhone. I'd never been on YouTube.
Yeah. You're drinking from a fire hose for sure.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, and people are, and it's funny because I feel like it took me a little bit of time because initially I resisted for maybe 6 months, but I had to make myself, force myself to sit down and I was watching 5 or 6 YouTube videos a day to do anything. But very quickly I realized that I could watch YouTube. I was lucky. I have a tutor in my pocket to tell me how to use the phone that's telling me how to use it that I can't use. It's telling me how to use itself. I'm looking at multiple videos. Anyway, what's so funny about that is that I would still sit there with people like Colby and other people that are guys that are sitting here that have had this technology the entire time, and they're having 5-minute conversations about, well, was that so and so? Well, was that in the movie? And they're going back, and I'm like, you have the most powerful device ever created. You just spent 5 minutes discussing something what's the name of the movie? The cast of such and such. I'll be like, okay, is it this guy, this guy? Oh, yeah, that's the guy. Okay. You spent 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I've taken to it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it's only getting more and more amazing every single day.
I agree.
Okay. But also more and more scary. My wife and I have a discussion about something, cookers or some kind of pressure cooker or something. And she's like, "Oh, we got to get a pressure cooker." Yeah. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, you pick up your phone and you go to look up something. Man, I've never talked about pressure cookers in my life. I've never looked one up. And there's 4 ads for pressure cookers.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Oh, you bastard. We'll have a conversation. Sometimes I feel like saying let's walk in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 snitches and those they're listening to us. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
You want to buy a bow and arrow? Are we allowed to buy bow and arrows? We're both convicts.
The privacy issue and the release of our privacy as technology invades our life. I mean, the phones are taking rapid pictures of you all the time, and they're absolutely listening and stuff. They're saying it's just just to get you what you want, right?
It's just people helping people. We're just trying to help you.
I had a guy come give me a quote to paint my house 2 years ago, and manual labor guy, that's what he does for a living. And he at first I thought he was just trying to build rapport with me. He's standing on my porch. He's telling me about his family or something. Okay, and then he's like, "I got a Ring camera on my door." He's like, sees the Ring camera, like, "Oh, come here, bro." And he walked away from the Ring camera, walked around in my carport, and then he started telling me about all his issues with his wife, but he didn't want to tell me in front of the Ring camera. And 5 minutes later, this guy's crying in my carport, and I'm like, yeah. I'm definitely not going to.
He didn't want to see himself on Twitter, like man confesses, about poor relationship with his wife, right?
Yeah, I did not go with him.
Well, look, life, humanity, it just propels itself forward, right? And we're going to continue to tinker and develop tools. We've been doing this since we've been on this planet, with the wheel and fire, and ultimately we went digital. But now we're going to that next state of digital. I think of a lot of times I think about space travel as not like out there. I think about it as into the computer, right? And with virtual reality and all that kind of stuff. You guys seen Ready Player One, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to come up with these avatars and do different things like that. I just heard, and I was thinking this would have been a great idea like 5 years ago. One of my favorite bands growing up was Kiss. Like, loved Kiss.
You don't even know about Kobe. Didn't even know.
I
about
just
it.
know what they look like. That's about it. Yeah.
Detroit Rock City, Beth.
Yeah. Well, so the
amazing.
Destroyer record I had on 8-track. I know you don't know what the hell that is. I had those my first 2 records was Kiss Destroyer and John Denver that had Country Roads on it.
Yeah.
And I wore those freaking 8-tracks out. But anyway, 4 or 5 years ago, I was thinking these guys. I mean, they're getting up there. They're too old to tour.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing in the young like Catman guy and Spaceman guy, right? They need to come up with like some avatars, like virtual reality stuff, and then they can always be forever young. Fire. I mean, you think about what Gene's Fire could do and all that stuff. It's like digital, Turns out they're having a freaking avatar tour. Like 2025 or 2026, they're coming out with like digital avatars of Kiss. That's data point number 1. What I did on Saturday, my family and I, my wife and youngest daughter went to Las Vegas to see the Eagles at the Sphere. Have you been to the Sphere yet?
I have. About a few months ago.
Who'd you see?
No, we just saw they were
Planet
playing,
Earth thing.
Planet Earth.
Yeah. What'd you think about that?
I've been to IMAX.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a much bigger, much more clear IMAX. I thought it was amazing. Yeah. I was kind of disappointed only because I do editing.
Yeah.
Right, with the Final Cut Pro, so we do a lot of editing. So if you're kind of into editing,
right.
I was disappointed with some of the edits. Some of the transitions.
I thought you did poorly on some of the edits.
But was it phenomenal? Okay. I mean, absolutely. Like the giraffe and you can see the skin like you've never seen it before. And you wanted to touch the giraffe, and I mean, it's phenomenal.
It's completely immersive,
and it's you have to look over here to.
So we set up. You must have set kind of like at level 2 or level 3. I'm thinking we were up in level 4, most of it was.
No, we were down kind of in the middle, kind of like it dropped straight off. We weren't even up.
Crazy.
We were right, like if you leaned over. It was good.
So my wife and daughter got vertigo because of that. Like they couldn't sit in there. They had to get out of there.
It's definitely you're definitely leaning. You're definitely like you feel like you're. I mean, I can see how you could get sick. I think
Hotel California and freaking they did Lying Eyes. And the lyrics start freaking cascading from the top of the ceiling and stuff. And they're like the lines are written sideways and they're kind of flowing around. I mean, it was mind blowing. Super cool.
I'm going to tell you, what about the Amy, the robot? Isn't that what they were called, Amy?
Is this like the robot girlfriend type of thing?
No, the robots, when you first walk into the main lobby,
I don't think I saw that.
You can talk to, they have robots that you can go up and say, hi, how are you? And, and it's a robot that it's interactive. You ask it questions. It's like, oh, I love humans. And,
they may have just had that because it was that show. I don't recall seeing any robots.
Oh, you know why? Because they went to a concert.
Yeah, this was an Eagles concert.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is just the regular everyday. You can pay for a ticket, go into where the lobby is, and they have all these robots that I'm sure you've seen some TikToks.
I've seen them.
It's a woman that talks to you, and it's
I've seen also some the Tesla ones being like a bartender and doing stuff like that. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's funny too because these things probably were put in, I guess, whenever the Sphere came on board because they were like amazing then, but Tesla robots are probably more advanced than than these things are, and they're stuck. They're I want to say stable. They're locked in. They're not walking around. They're talking to you, but they're obviously there's cords running down their legs.
Yep. I think I've seen it, and you can kind of see their backs. Their heads open, but the face is there.
But the face is cool because the face kind of moves and it talks to you.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
It's like the next evolution of like the Disney animatronic type stuff.
Yeah. 10 years from now, Yeah, it's gonna be insane. But you know, it's funny because I watch a ton of stuff on SpaceX and going to Mars and all the projects and you know, Elon Musk and so I watch a lot of that. And I mean, and you'll see every once in a while I'll get some thing that'll come up, some TikTok or some short or something or a video, some jerk off who's like, you know, I always love it when they're like, Elon Musk could do so much more with that money. Let him do what he wants to do with his money. That's none of your business. You think he should do better? Go out and make trillions and billions. Do what you want to do. Give it away to the poor.
Right.
And of course, the other thing is, which I highly believe in, is that if you took all the money and you divided it equally, in 5 years from now, it'd be back in the upper 5% of society anyway, because they know how to manage money and you don't.
Yep, I believe that too.
So it'd be a waste. But the other thing is that, you know, the robots you can send to, you know, 5 or 10 years from now, you can send them to Mars, you know? And I think what he's doing is, whether you like his politics or not, that's irrelevant. It's phenomenally, it's over the top amazing what he's doing, because if you gave me trillions of dollars, I'd just be a rock star. I'd have 40 Lamborghinis and I'd be a jerk off and I'd be living in some penthouse and I'd be a complete asshole. And this is a guy who said, nah, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking we go to Mars and set up another society for humanity in case something goes wrong, because guess what? We're due. It happens every once in a while. So, like, what an amazing individual. So that's amazing to me. And the other thing is, what people don't realize is, you think that NASA and going to the moon and all those things that they've done are wasteful spending. Those things have moved our society forward by leaps and bounds, because so much technology had to be created to get those things to happen. Things that you take for granted right now that make your life so much better than it ever could have been had those programs not been developed. So that money that was wasn't pissed away because it's the microchips in your computer and all of the devices that you use, and everything from rubbers and plastics and contact lenses and phones and cameras, and all these things had to be advanced dramatically to get those programs to actually work. And people don't realize that. They think, they spent this much money and what a waste. And well, you have no idea how much that benefited you. Because people are just, in general, you know, the bulk of people are just selfish and stupid, and they're not really thinking, you know, on what those things have done. So I think that Elon Musk and, you know, robots and going to Mars is going to dramatically increase everybody's life, you know, or at least their quality of life. You know, if not yours, at least your children. But I don't think most people are probably thinking along those lines. But.
We have a good friend in the community. He's a guy named Patrick Riley. He runs a company called Reaper Financial. He's a next level. Yeah, Patrick's like a next level genius. Love him to pieces. He's got this next level propulsion technology that he's working on to do space travel and stuff. But one of the things that we talk about a lot, this kind of ties more back to, you know, I'm like a financial guy, right? Is being able to like mine precious metals and stuff off of asteroids.
Oh yeah, that'll be the first trillionaire or billionaire. First trillionaire would be the guy that figures out how to do that.
And the resources in like one asteroid is more than all the money potentially that we know of in the world. Yeah. So that, I mean, I'm agreeing with you 1,000%. That like we don't even know the big quantum leaps in humanity that we can take by continuing to kind of go down this, you know, technological development road that we're on.
Did you see? I'm going to get the name wrong. It's by Apple. It's called.
What does it do?
It's called I want to say For All Mankind is what it's called. It's a series, and on Apple it's called. And I'm almost positive I got that.
For All Mankind.
Nice. memory so
Way to
bad.
go.
But
Apple needs to send you a check, by the way.
Yeah, I think that it's might have been 3 series where I'm waiting for the next series to come up. And you know what it is? And I used to love these comic books when I was a kid, by the way. What If?
Okay. Yeah.
And it's what if the Soviet Union and the United States, what if the space race hadn't been or didn't stop? So what if instead of we got to the point where the Soviets basically said, all right, we're throwing in the towel.
Yep.
What if they did go to the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we would have gone to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got these things. It's like what, and it's so funny because the technology that is, so they're in the late 80s, early 90s by the time they actually get to Mars. But the technology that you realize, you start to realize, like, what do you mean it's 1990?
Mm-hmm.
But they've got cell phones, and they've got like everything is shifted forward, and they've done it and blended it with. Some things are the same and some things aren't. You know, you like the clothes are okay, but they're using this, or they're driving electric vehicles, but there's all these things that are happening, and they end up developing nuclear propulsion for the vehicles that are taking them to Mars. Listen, Apple does amazing series.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they put in. They're just willing to blow a ton of money. They've got to be losing their ass on that whole channel because they're dumping so much money into the series.
They're quite the cash cow, though. So
I know,
they got it.
It's amazing though, and I'm waiting for the next series because the last series they got to Mars and they're kind of setting up.
Steve Jobs was one of those guys, right? Who really pushed the boundary.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's so funny about him. It makes me think of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you say, hey, in some ways, and we're going to lose some subscribers here, Colby. So in some ways.
Is that his department?
Yeah, he's going to be like, what's with, like, we're staying away from politics. So, but I think this is true. In some ways, it's like, this is the guy that I want leading this country because he only gives a shit about this country.
Mm-hmm.
Like your country. Look, Canada. Oh, well, if you do these tariffs, it's going to destroy us. And that's your fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about my citizens. I was elected by this country. And I'm sorry if things are going wrong for your country. You should probably fix that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about how these things affect us. This is who I was elected for. This is who I want the best for. I believe that. But like most CEOs, presidents of, corporations and countries, is that unfortunately, the really strong, powerful, good ones are narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
They have narcissistic personalities. They're not fluffy. They're not giving out hugs. They're jerks. They're tough, narcissistic pricks, and unfortunately that's what he's, so you're right. He's not hugging people and telling them and coddling them and everything. He's a bully and he yells and screams and pushes people and tells them, this is what you're doing. That's what you're not doing. Go fuck yourself if you don't like it. I want that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need the guy to hug me and tell me, So I get that. It's the same thing with like Elon Musk, and it's the same thing. I think those are the people that get things done. And I was going somewhere with that. I was going somewhere.
Yeah.
Those are the people.
No, I think that was the statement.
That's the point.
I was starting with that and I was going somewhere else. I'm telling you, I'm getting old.
We had mentioned Jobs. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Steve Jobs, thank you.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs was the same way.
Right.
He was listen, they couldn't. Did you ever read the
Isaacson book?
Yeah, oh my 100%,
God. Yeah.
You couldn't find anybody to say anything really that Steve Jobs was a sweet person and a nice individual and a good guy to work with. It was he demanded the best of everybody. He drove you into the ground. He worked you to absolute death. He didn't give a fuck about your feelings. He was a horrific person to work for, but he was a visionary, and he's the one that got things done. He wasn't afraid to fail, just like Elon Musk. He doesn't mind failing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was amazing. And then the same thing, he had the whole thing with medication. He had a condition or a disease. It was a kidney failure or something.
Yeah, pancreatic cancer. Yeah.
That he had about an 80% chance of being cured if he had gone with traditional medication.
Right.
No, I'm going to eat some berries and herbs.
Yep.
I'm going to cure it naturally. And then you end up dying. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're amazing.
That was his
but you're an
mindset,
idiot.
though. That was his mindset. Yeah.
The guy could be alive right now.
Yeah.
But you had to go with eating berries.
Maybe he had a different perspective.
Oh, I think
what if he was alive now? Let's do that. What if? What if his system or theory, eating the berries, would have worked?
But it didn't. Traditional medicine gave him an 80% chance of survival.
I'm aware it didn't.
I'm not going with the shaman. I mean, because he doesn't wear shoes and they both like each other and he makes them feel good or whatever the deal was. But yeah, it's just those are the kinds of things. Like, how are you phenomenal? That's the problem with successful people, is that you become phenomenally successful in one area of your life. But then again, every relationship he had was a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, listen, I'm extremely narcissistic. I tell you, right? I know you don't see that. You think, hey, what a great guy. You don't really know me, though.
Yeah.
But I have always said this. I feel horrible for anybody that has a personal relationship with me. It's horrible. Because the whole time that person's talking, I'm just waiting for an opportunity to talk about myself. I'm looking
That's good
for
to know. You should have told me that before we started.
Figured this out a little bit. At this point, you've realized
I'm a smart guy.
You're like, oh, this guy. So, yeah, it's funny. It's growing pains just in general are just horrible, and like technology is horrible, and the whole crypto thing terrifies me.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be one of your blind spots, right? You need to be you're Steve Jobs, not getting the chemo and radiation.
I should have got the radiation. I want to eat the berries. I want to stick with cash.
What would you say to maybe, let's just say, more blue collar, unsophisticated person that has no idea or clue about crypto? What would you suggest to them to help set themselves up for the next 20, 30 years? Like, what should be doing as it concerns to financial crypto and stuff like that?
That's a great question. It's not going to hurt anybody to watch some YouTube videos and just learn a little bit about what's going on. You might find that you have an interest in some things. You know, the Hawk Tuas of the world isn't the worst thing ever, in that it is getting people, more mainstream, more blue collar interested in these digital things that maybe otherwise they wouldn't have looked at or gotten into. I'm not a financial advisor.
Right.
So, this is for entertainment purposes only,
right.
And all that stuff, all that disclaimer. But we very much believe that the XRPL and XRP is going to be a very important asset in the coming financial system. But there's several of these tokens. So there's XRP, XLM, XDC's one. Cardano looks like it might be one. I think if you could just buy a little sack of these assets and stick them away, make sure you keep all your. You got to have these seed phrases and stuff like that to access your wallet in case something happens to it. So you want to keep that. But I think you'll be grateful you did, even if you don't think about it every day like we do. Because you just, as these things increase in value and the networks become more utilized, you kind of have you got access rights on the Internet of Value superhighway.
I was gonna say, so invest in the more stable, not the hot
exactly. Stick with the blue chip ones.
Cryptos?
Even if they experience some type of a downfall or whatever, they're not going to go to zero because they're so pervasive in different applications or whatever that they're going to be used for something.
They're also being run by conservative people that are business minded,
real people. Yeah,
that aren't the Haktua coin that you think.
Correct.
I love the guy that did a video. It's like, I invested $20,000 and now it's worth like $110 or something on her coin.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's like but then I think, but you didn't buy it because you thought you were holding this long term. You thought this was a get rich scheme. That's why you put $20,000 into it.
Correct.
And you lost.
Yeah.
You had to know somebody was going to lose.
Yeah.
So you weren't like, was it Warren Buffett? Nope. He's like, I saw an interview with him where somebody said that people are constantly saying, "Why do you like give people your secrets and tell them?" He's like, "Because people don't want to do what I'm telling them to do." He's
That's
like,
right.
Nobody wants to get rich slowly.
Right.
And I love that phrase. And it's like, that's why this guy invested $20,000 into a girl that's famous for going Haktua and lost $20,000. He could have taken that $20,000 and put it in Ethereum or any of these coins that you're talking about. And would he have made a bunch of money right away? No, but you wouldn't have lost 20 grand either.
That's right.
But in 10 years, it might be worth 30. It might be worth 60.
Yeah.
It's not going to be worth $109 or $110.
Yeah. They just had there's a very famous video of a guy going to his computer monitor when Bitcoin hit $100. And I think it was in 2011. And they basically paid him when it hit 100,000, so $1 would have been what? That's like 10,000x, your money. So he could have taken that 20,000.
I was going to say, is this the guy that bought the pizza?
No, but it's a
Similar.
Yeah, it's a similar story. It's later on. The guy who bought the pizza, I think that was like $10. He got the I think he got a few pizzas, right? Bitcoin pizza guy.
And it was now worth like,
Oh, it's billions. Yeah, because that was
pizza
that was like the first real transaction I think that anybody ever kind of did using the Bitcoin. And that was a long time ago. That's like 2010. I think it's like 2010 that happened.
That's like the guy that the fourth investor in
Apple.
The guy that put in like $1,000
I used to know his name.
3 days later, he was like, "You know what? I just want my $1,000.
Just want it back. Yeah, just want it back."
They're like, "Okay, it's 25% of their 20% of the company.
Yeah.
Or, here's your 1,000."
Yeah. Well, that takes foresight. It takes perseverance. There's all that bumpy stuff that happens. I'm kind of, the past 4 or 5 years have been difficult, but still here. Mm-hmm. Still heavily invested. Still, the people, the network that I have, and the people who are involved in this sector, absolutely amazing. These are visionary people in and of themselves, and it's super fun. I mean, what opportunity would a guy have to like sit at the crossroads of fiat going to digital, bringing the capital, the entire capital markets on chain? That could be the legacy of our firm, and I mean that could be Vallee may be synonymous to J.P. Morgan 100 years from now, because that's the opportunity that we're at. But you got to do the Warren Buffett thing. You got to grind through and do it slow.
How does the you keep saying the movie it's a documentary,
right? Yeah.
How did the doc come about?
So it's produced by Fruition Films, and it's a husband and wife team, Chris and Maya Dodge.
Did they approach you guys?
Yeah. So they were crypto enthusiasts. They had traded some crypto and stuff and did pretty well. Chris, up until recently, was also an executive at Google. So had a real interest in digital assets and all that stuff. They had some friends that were kind of tangentially around the XRP community. Who were like, "Oh, you guys ought to look at doing something on XRP." That's how they end up talking to Valhill. And I think, I don't. In fact, I know because I've sat and talked with Chris quite a bit about this. But the movie they set out to make, they thought was going to be more of a generalist, like kind of stuff we were talking about the first of the show. And when they learned about this ETHgate thing, they kept hearing it from all these different people. It became the story. So this one really peels back the layer on some of these corporate deals I was starting to get into, and the corruption, the regulatory capture, all that stuff. If people want to look into Valhill more, they can go to valhilladvisors.io. We have a thing called the Vault, which you can sign up to. Got our thought leadership. So if they want to start learning some stuff, we break this down in real simple infographic type stuff. We've got several papers. In fact, I brought you a couple in your swag bag there.
Is this on your website, or is this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Valhill Advisors, VALHIL advisors.io.
And you're going that is that with the documentary? That's about what your
That's
company's
that's
doing.
just what my company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, if you like the video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos like this. Also, we're going to leave all of the links for Jimmy's company and for the doc in the description box. So go there, click on it, check it out. Really appreciate you guys watching. Once again, I know you've heard this before. Please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month. There will be parts of this video that will be placed on Patreon. The whole video will be uncensored, although that's not really an issue here. But also there'll probably be sections of this that end up going on a Patreon exclusive, whatever. All right. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. See ya. Is that okay? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.